Dionysus. Thereupon Zeus, taking up the child, handed it over to the care of Hermes, and ordered him to take it to the cave in Nysa, which lay between Phoenicia and the Nile, where he should deliver it to the nymphs that they should rear it, and with great solitude bestow upon it the best of care. Consequently, since Dionysus was reared in Nysa, he received the name he bears from Zeus in Nysa. What is between Phoenicia and the Nile? Modern day Israel. So this is why this land is so important. This is where these, that's where ancient Tyre and Byblos was, in that whole area in Syria. What's going on in the world today? They're fighting over that whole area again. Not only do they fight over that whole area, when they go in, what's the first thing they like to do? Go get the archaeological items, right? The artifacts, where they blow up the temples so you don't know what's in there. The symbols, the information. They don't want you to know what's in there. And all that stuff disappears. Right? Why? What's it going to tell you? It's going to tell you all this stuff that I'm telling you. And it's going to prove it. Okay, like I said, Dionysus went to all over the world. India, Greece. He set up kingdoms. He built gated cities in Egypt. But he also built it in India. What is the city that's lost under the waters? A many-gated city. It's the same thing. The same style, building style. Okay. You know that Dionysus, Cyrus, was murdered by Set and 72 conspirators and the Queen Aso, an Ethiopian queen. That's talked about in here. And there's different versions, like they'll talk about, Isis buried him and Set found it and chopped it up into 14 parts, and then she found it again and reburied it. So they kind of incorporate solar and lunar cycles in his story as well, because that 14 has to do with moon cycles, and 72 has to do with precession of the earth cycles. As I told you what the key was, the murdered son. Look at Jesus. Let's see, what they're always showing him with. That heart, that sacred heart. Who was this guy? We don't know. This is the hand of Sabazius. What is it again? Right? It's got all the symbols on that. That was part of their cults. There's Osiris and Dionysus, same person, the baby. Kabbalah. We're going to talk about that. That represents bloodlines. I'll talk about that in a minute. Zeus has all of his symbols. And you'll go through mythology from culture to culture, and they'll always have something very similar. Lightning bolts, same like Inti has lightning bolts in the Incan pantheon. It's his equivalent. A phoenix or an eagle. Pomegranate to show his seed, his many, many bloodlines. Water, rain, fertility, bulls. Bulls can represent Zeus. It can represent Dionysus, Osiris. It can represent Set. But it was very important to use that bull for agriculture. Bloodlines, and I've tracked that through all of this study, and I'm still working on it, but here's what I've come up with. Apollo and Artemis are the equivalent of Freya and Freyja, and went to Sweden. That's where they ended up, and their bloodlines became the Nordic kings. Athena is Bridget. She went to Ireland. Okay, Aeneas was supposedly a son of Aphrodite and a Trojan king, but that whole Trojan period came way after this, so he must have been some sort of a descendant. When the Trojans lost, they went into Italy, and then eventually one of his grandsons, Brutus, went up into England, and from that became King Arthur. That's where all these royal houses are coming from. Hermes was in Egypt. Heracles is the equivalent of Gilgamesh. He's Semite. This is the Argive dynasty. Poseidon, Greece. Santorini, Atlantis. Hephaestus and Lemnos. I also, Scythes are Ukrainian and Russian. Some people think that Ashkenazi Jews are Scythian. I really don't know yet. I haven't really decided, maybe. But Scythians, Zeus gave one of the women a son who became the bloodline of their leader. So all of these bloodlines came from this one guy. Now, there were Amazons, that's real. They fought the Atlanteans and won, but the Atlanteans plotted to get rid of these Amazons by putting them up against another female tribe called Gorgons, and the two of them wiped each other out. But that's written about in these books. Myrina was the last great queen. And Prometheus had many bloodlines: Egypt, Greece, Syria, and I don't know, maybe other ones. You have a lot of these bloodlines running around competing for power. The main ones were these, but yeah, they've killed off a lot of these royal house kings and queens, like the Tsar of Russia. Some of the things prior to World War I, they assassinated Archduke Ferdinand, right? They got rid of the Irish kings of Tara. So you're down to a few bloodlines left, but who are they really? We don't know. Prometheus was in ancient Egypt. It says it in here. And he had red hair and was of red color. We always hear about him being chained to a rock as a punishment for giving man fire after Zeus said no. This book says it's an allegory, and that the eagle comes and eats his liver out every day. It says it's an allegory for the floodwaters destroying his area in Egypt. But Heracles helped him dam up the area so he could grow food and have his kingdom. It says, while Osiris and his army were thus employed, the Nile, they say, at the time of the rising of Sirius, which is the season when the river is usually at flood, breaking out of its banks and inundated a large section of Egypt and covered especially that part where Prometheus was governor. And since practically everything in the district was destroyed, Prometheus was so grieved that he was on the point of quitting life willfully. Because its water sweeps down so swiftly and with such violence that the river was given the names Aedes. But Heracles, being ever intent upon great enterprise and eager for the reputation of a manly spirit, speedily stopped the flood at its breach and turned the river back into its former course. Consequently, certain of the Greek poets worked the incident into a myth to with effect that Heracles had killed the eagle which was devouring the liver of Prometheus. This is in Diodorus Siculus' The Library of History. There you go. Prometheus was also in Egypt. And that's the story of the eagle eating his liver. It was an allegory for the flood and that Heracles came and helped him. Because in the myth, Heracles sets him free, right? Kills this eagle. Prometheus was red-haired and reddish tone. He's called Typhon. That's not one of his names. It says, red oxen, however, may be sacrificed because it was thought that this was the color of Typhon, who plotted against Osiris and then was punished by Isis for the death of her husband, by Diodorus Siculus, The Library of History. Red-haired, red devil. Okay. I'm getting close. You want me to just kind of wrap it up? I'm getting close to the end. And then we take a break and go back for questions. Okay. Then it goes on. It just talks about they would go after red-haired men in Egypt because of what this guy did. It wasn't a good thing to be red-haired in Egypt. So I believe Prometheus is set, and Helen Blavatsky states that in her books. Church of Satan even says it, modern-day Prometheus. Satan's history. Right up in your face. It's right up in your face. And he had his symbols, as all of them do. I'm going to go through this kind of quick. So, Kabbalah. This is a bloodline. All of these sephiroths represent a god and one of those chronines. The Qliphoth is the opposite. It represents a Promethean, someone in his bloodline. I found that through a book called The Black Arts by Richard Cavendish. He equates the Sephiroth to these Greek gods. So when they do their magic and call these spirits, they're calling the Chronides or Prometheans or ancient Phoenicians. That's what that is. Okay, just want to get this out. They're the Atlanteans as well. What does it say? Now this is we'll just go here. Now the queen of the Amazons, Myrina, collected an army of 30,000 foot soldiers and 3,000 cavalry, since they favored to an unusual degree the use of cavalry in their wars. For protective devices, they used the skins of large snakes, since Libya contained such animals of incredible size. And for offensive weapons, swords and lances, they also used bows and arrows, in which they struck not only when facing the enemy, but also when in a fight, by shooting backwards at their pursuers with good effect. Upon entering the land of the Atlanteans, they defeated in a pitched battle the inhabitants of the city of Cerny, as it is called, and making their way inside the walls, along with the fleeing army, they got the city into their hands, and desiring to strike terror into the neighboring peoples, they treated the captives savagely. And it goes on, it says, whereupon the Atlanteans presented her with magnificent presents, and by public decree voted to her notable honors, and she in return accepted their courtesy, in addition promised that she would show kindness to their nation. That's Myrina. These Atlanteans who lived along the coast and probably on this island that's gone were always attacked by these Amazons, but then they made a truce with this queen, and then they convinced the Amazons to go after these different tribe called the Gorgons, and they defeated each other. They killed each other off. So what about these giants? Why are these gods and goddesses always shown as huge? Maybe they had the right genetics to be huge. These are the Hugo brothers, and they have certain genetics that make them that big. Oftentimes it's a pituitary problem. There are genetic components. So I have to wonder if this Chronide family, who's always described as tall, Titans are tall, if they had the right genetics, being this tall would also make them able to make people worship them and be in their control. Briefly in Nevada, this is another area. What did I find out there? Lovelock Cave, they talk about red-haired people fighting with Native Americans who were in the Paiute tribe. I actually went out there, and I'm still in the process of investigating this, but these red-haired people were killed off. They were accused of cannibalism. And what did I tell you the problem of the world was? Cannibalism. And the Paiute killed them off because of it. But that's an accusation. There was some evidence of that. 3 bones only in that cave. And mummies were found. But it's a whole different story. Out in the petroglyphs at the Valley of Fire, I believe this is a Phoenician ship. Here's another ship. That's about an hour outside of Las Vegas. Phoenician type letters, Sloan Canyon, right outside of Las Vegas. A professor at the University of Chicago told me they look vaguely Levantine. So I wrote a book about it. It's something I'm still working on. Okay. And this is the woman, Sarah Winnemucca, in the 1800s who wrote about these red-haired people being in America. I know there was travel. I know it for a fact. She also wrote about it. This is a Yurok woman who said there were white people all over the Americas when her tribe came. Is that the real the red man? We don't know yet. Okay. And what's St. Patrick doing? Right? He's giving you that blessing again. Alright, we're getting to the end. Oops, I went backwards. The same symbol. What's Jesus Christ doing with that heart that he keeps pointing to? What bloodline is this guy? Who they say might be buried in Kashmir? He's probably a pharaoh if they're presenting him that way. Same symbol. I told you about the Abrahamic religion. All of these, everything comes from it. Even Satanism, which is based on Prometheus. Hindus, paganism, Mormonism. Yeah. And we went into the Dark Ages. By the way, this is from Europe. It shows them building mounds. That's in a tapestry. I have yet to see any petroglyph of so-called Native Americans building mounds. That's from Europe. Atlantis, they said that went down, the last of it, in 12,000. That's written about in these books. It isn't just Plato who wrote about it. Diodorus Siculus also wrote about it. And I told you about the timeline. I told you about the Amazons. I told you about Brutus going into England. And of course there was a matriarchy, right? We know that those Venus statues were before much of this other patriarchy. We know that the female goddess in Tyre was killed off, and that's when it shifted from this matriarchy to patriarchy. This goes back quite a bit. And the priest, they keep the knowledge. You don't have it, just as they keep this at a prestigious university that most people don't know about, and certainly don't teach it in the high school like they should. We don't know what bloodlines are remaining. And the Watchers, by the way, Atlas, who is also Iapetus, taught astrology. That was also what one of your fallen angels, Baraquiel, taught. He was killed. Cronus killed Iapetus. He didn't want him getting any power. They also killed this brother Hyperion. That's what you see. The son getting stabbed because Cronus and Iapetus killed that brother. They didn't want him to get power. That's written about in these books. That's from Sumer. That's what that is about. I told you the Goetian occult. It's all these Phoenicians. It's all these ancient Cronines. Once you start connecting it together. Oh, interesting. You know where this is from? Alabama. That's from a mound site in Alabama called Moundville. This is a replica of it. The eye in the hand. Well, what is that? That's a Hamza from the Middle East, and this has Hebrew letters on it. They were traveling here. They were always traveling here. And people get very angry at me once I start presenting this stuff. They don't want this out. I've had to deal with some really nasty people just on YouTube in general. They don't like that I'm talking about this stuff and showing it.